of Wales which sprout, I think I understood you to say, William. Yes, Frank.
She's thrown us again.
Well, not really. What's this rubbish about hacking jackets and Damascus? What on earth are you thinking of, Patrick? Well, obviously of hacking jackets and Damascus, but schools of Wales are called schools of Wales, aren't they? I mean, why is the School of Wales called a Gamberlock?
Because they sprout or thereabouts.
No, keep out of it, Robinson.
All right. I'm seldom in it.
This is a private quarrel. This is a private... and yet, Gamberlock. No, we think, two of us think, it's a scissor-like kick which denites a knight. Oh, it isn't, is it, by the look on your face?
Well,
I've committed myself.
Well, she looks amazed. Look, amazement.
Put the scissor hole on your card.
2 on Bluff, Gwen. Ah. So it was no kick, something else. What was it?
We're coming round Damascus. There we are.
Not fair. It's not fair, that one.
It's what the gratins wear when they go hacking in Damascus, which they do all the time. Funkin is the next word. Frank.
Funkin. Funkin. I'm attempting to look inscrutable.
Don't bother.
Hoping that you'll be unable to scrute me. Funkin is a Chinese measurement of distance in the province of Canton.
Oh, good
It's about 4 English miles. And Sir Wilfrid Death, in a journal in the 19th century, said that the reservoir near Canton is 8 funkins in circumference, he is told.
Yes. Hearing wasn't so good, perhaps, who knows? And Coren.
Very straightforward. Kin, diminutive as any schoolboy knows. Ramekin, small pot. Mannequin, small cigar. Fonkin is a small fon, at which point we have to ask ourselves what a large fon is. Fon, medieval word for a fool. Fonkin is a court jester, tended to be rather small. Hudson, you will remember instantly, was a jester at the court of someone in the 17th century, sprang from pies. You'll see from this that either they had very large pies or they had fonkins, which were very small jesters. That's what it is.
I hadn't got round to letting girls get out of cakes. Yes, we've come a long way since then. Rachel Billington.
Well, a fonkin is an extremely unpleasant thing. You can sort of tell, sort of fusty, nasty sound it's got to it. And what it is the smell of rotting meat. Now, that can be a very happy smell if you happen to like pheasant, which, as we all know, has to get pretty nauseating before it's good to eat. In fact, there's an old culinary saying, which is, the higher the pheasant, the higher the pheasant, the fiercer the fonkin. And that's good.
No.
Yes, one runs into people saying it all the time. It's a very small fool. It's a Chinese measure, and it's the smell of bad meat. Patrick.
A small fool with a large pie. Poor Rachel, trying to remember, was nonsense about the small smell of the funkin.
Are you talking about...
I'm thinking out loud.
That's another matter.
Just a minute, a second. It couldn't be a small jest. Yes. Yes, we...
I'd like to draw lots.
We find... I'm not here talking. I think it's a kind of measure of distance.
Do you?
We do. Once again, all over again.
Oh. You're choosing that for certain, are you? Right, that was Frank. Was that true or Bluff?
Bluff.
No, a funkin isn't that. It's something else. It must be. It has to be. What is it?
What could it be?
Oh, no.
Yes. Very tiny fool who used to jump out of a pie at discretion. 1-1, and we have we have Miriacid. Yes, thank you. I heard a member of the audience pronounce it for me. William Franklyn.
Mirakit. After a Sumatran tribesman gets engaged, he's forbidden...
Engaged?
You get engaged, yes. Sumatran and tribesmen do get engaged. They don't actually either live together or get married straight away. They go through this prolonged engagement. And under the Matrimonial Prescription Act of Sumatra, the year I'm not sure of, he is forbidden to gaze upon the countenance of his mother-in-law, which means, apart from anything else, that in Sumatran music hall there are very few jokes left. The material is very thin. Indeed, even if he just sees the footprint of the mother-in-law, the wedding is off. And that is what Mirakit is. It's a matrimonial prescription in Sumatra.
Prescription?
Take it round to the, Gwen.
A Miriacid is a strange, nervous affliction of Siberian origin. And its main and very disconcerting symptom is an overpowering urge to mimic everything that is said and done.
Oh, I've got that.
Have you really? Yes. And a Siberian peasant who has a bout of Miriacid rather tends to be like a hopped-up Mike Yarwood.
So, Patrick Campbell.
A Miriacid. A kind of Parsi conception of hell.
Oh, Parsi.
And a Parsi passes on into the Miriacid. His main fear is that he's going to be mangled by owls.
Leave it there. Don't touch a word. It's a Sumatran marriage rite. It's a Parsi's idea of hell. And it's a nervous habit in Siberia involving compulsive mimicry. Alan Coren.
I've just finished writing down mangled by owls. Can't really believe he actually said it. It looks good on paper.
I've got as far as parsley.
I'll have a cigarette for my Siberian nervous affliction as well.
However, comma.
I can't believe the Sumatran tribesmen for a moment. We've been given Sumatra, Siberia and Parsis this time.
Oh, Parsi.
Parsi, not parsley. My knowledge of any of those languages is limited. My knowledge of Siberian is better than most. That's what it is. It's a Siberian nervous affliction. It's Gwen's. Certain of it.
You did say it, Gwen Watford, didn't you?
I did.
And you're right. As unlikely definitions go, we'll hardly beat that one, but it's perfectly true. Nervous affliction in Siberia. Go round mimicking people. Well, you can tell certain Siberians, I suppose, from other people. There you have Hyphia, so. And it's Alan Coren's go.
First technical word of the evening for me, Hyphia, actually a mathematical calculation, as indeed it sounds, which astrologers use to determine from the size of ear of a baby or whatever, how tall it's going to be, whether it's going to be successful in later life. Any of these things, it's a mathematical extrusion done by astrologers from birth charts to arrive at their curious conclusions.
Right. Rachel, your turn.
Well, it's really much simpler than it sounds. Hyphia, or Hyphia, it doesn't really matter. Well, and it's also rather charming because it fits in so nicely with this Christmas season, because it's a variety of mistletoe. And as you know, mistletoe normally grows on apple trees. I'm sure you know that. But in fact, this is a rather special sort of mistletoe, which grows on fir trees and conifers.
No, it doesn't.
Conifers generally. And I don't think you should doubt me round about Christmas. That's what it is, mistletoe.
Right, it's Frank Muir's turn.
Hyphia is a little locust with vestigial horns just above its vest, or where there would be if it wore a vest. And it's Central South America, ravages the crops. Don't go to look for it because it's rather difficult to see, because it rather sort of fades into the background, and it's noted for it. A difficult to see small locust with vestigial vestigial horns.
So it's an astrological or mathematical calculation involving astrologers, a certain sort of mistletoe, and a locust, noted for it. William Franklyn.
Yes, well, while my group are working on the Greek for hyphos, you go to work on that and come up with something. I'd like to discuss the ones that I want to eliminate. And it is known that Rachel always tells lies around Christmas time. And my Irish friend here tells me that the mistletoe and the bogs don't have high fears on them. So we'll eliminate that. There's a reasonable chance that cunningly camouflaged little locusts, which I think is a South American animal predominantly, therefore probably wouldn't have a name. I don't think with the Greek... I mean, I've no idea really what I'm talking about, but it's a theory I'd like to promulgate. So I'd like to, having got no help here from the hyphos, I'd like to come back to you, Alan, and I think the astrological measurement of babies' bundoons is probably what it is.
Well, that's what Alan Coren said. Was that true or bluff? Now we shall hear.
I shall find out for myself.
We've heard again.
No. No question of it being astrological. What does it really mean? Come on now.
I told you.
Mistletoe growing on fir trees, at which point, Patrick, I remember you saying, oh, no, it isn't. But it is. Sorry, I didn't really... No, didn't mean to rub it in, you know. Back it. Gwen.
Yes. A backet, which derives from the French word baquet, B-A-C-Q-U-E-T, means the same thing, and it's a rope for hauling contraband cargo. So a smuggler would wind his backet round his torso whenever the excise men were about, and then he would unleash it for its unlawful purpose whenever, quite literally, the coast was clear.
Mm-hmm. Yes, cast them into a profound, I was going to say gloom. No, thought. Patrick.
The English word for a bucket is a bucket. The Irish word for a bucket is a bucket. The Scots word for a bucket is a bucket. After you have a little warm, little glowing Scots fireplace, it dies away. Well, you get hold of your bucket, a kind of trough shit that hangs at each end. I push the ashes into it. You clear the fireplace with your bucket.
Splendid news for Scotsmen.
Well done.
William.
A backet is a roofing slate approximately 10 inches by 8 inches. There are over 30 standard sizes of roofing slate, each with its own particular name according to which county it comes from. Esoteric, you might say. Besides a backet...
Slower.
Well, this is very factual documentary stuff, so I want to give it to you as it comes. Would you like me to go back to the beginning again?
No.
The local names vary from a backet to a cosset to a dumper, a Lord Mayor, a guffin. A backet, a roofing slate, 10 by 8.
Well, it's a Scots ash can, it's a roofing slate, and it's a smuggler's rope. Rachel Billington.
Right. Well, I don't understand why smugglers shouldn't call a rope and not a backet. I mean, it seems to me that these educated smugglers weren't going around inventing words. They were too busy getting their contraband in, so I'm not going to have that. Now, I'm quite tempted by the idea of this sort of bucket. Does it have... I'm not too good on Scots accents, whether it would go that... No. I think he was trying to bluff rather cleverly by making an obvious, boring one very complicated, so I laughed and forgot, so I'm going to go for the roofing slate.
That was William Franklyn. True or bluff, William? Tell us. Wasn't a slate. It was rubbish, as you say. Who gave the true definition? C. Who'd have known it that in Scotland they call the sort of thing underneath the grate a backet, or some of them do anyway. Stadder, beyond the bay. Stadder. Rachel Billington, yeah.
Oh, well, anyone who knows their Anglo-Saxon will immediately realise that stadder is a special sort of stone, a kind of brownish-grey mottled stone, which is known to look rather like the gizzard of an eagle, if you know that sort of brownish-grey mottled colour. And
Well,
don't know why you're laughing. I often look at eagles' gizzards. Anyway, also there is some grounds for believing that at some point Stonehenge was covered with this kind of mottled stone, like a sort of layer of marbling.
what nonsense!
Frank Muir.
A stadder is a stadder is a special saw for doing the very difficult thing of cutting teeth in combs. Now, consider a comb. Now, you see, if you cut a gap between the one tooth and where you want the next tooth to be, you've got to cut down and then cut down again and perhaps cut down a third time. But don't follow me. Please, let me finish.
Well,
if you put two blades together, you see, you can cut down once and you'll have the teeth exactly as far apart as you need them. So you can make it the difference between the thin one and the wide one when you want the hair loose.
It takes 4 years to make a case.
Now you know what spelled the end of the 3-volume novel, Alan Coren.
How does one begin to talk interestingly about huskies?
Try it.
I shall have a bash. A stadder is a husky. It's not an ordinary husky. And it's not chosen as you or I might choose a husky for its physique, but because of its intelligence. It's the lead dog in any sled team. It's bright, it's fast, you control the other dogs. It's a wise dog. There are very few famous stadders, but Amundsen, who was first to the South Pole by a short head, largely a result of his stadder, had a summer-yed called Knut.
Called what?
Knut.
Thank you.
Pronounce that very carefully. Knut was one of the dogs that got Amundsen to the pole first.
Well,
Bronchial.
If you believe that...
bully for Knut. It's a sort of stone. It's a leading dog, and, well, it might be. And it's a sort of saw, which Frank went into in some length, I believe. Gwen, you're to choose.
Dear, we are in disarray. Frank, I don't think it's the comb cutter, because I think it would be too laborious, all that. It would take so long to make a comb, all that. My real puzzle is between Rachel, with the stone of brownish colour, the eagle's throat, and the husky lead dog. And it's just a question of which one is more persuasive than the other, because I honestly don't know between those two. I think, forgive me, I'm going to pump for the lead dog.
That was spoken of in feeling terms by Alan Coren. True or bluff?
But a wise plump.
No, it wasn't a dog. Must have been something else. Must have been one of the other two, I suppose. Must be by the rules, the laws of life. Who gave it?
It's Frank, yeah!
Can't say he didn't give you every chance there to latch on to every last detail. Now, let's have Poon. And Patrick, what about Poon?
What about sugar cane? A lot of sugar cane. A huge thing right by that, 8 feet high. You would carry it into a place which you can put into sugar. A poon is where you chop up the sugar cane. Very often, it's accompanied by a kind of steel band. You can music while you work, in fact, in the poon, as you chop up the sugar cane, and there it is.
Right, William Franklyn?
It could become International Poon Year. And the reason for that is you have to listen to really what a poon is. A poon actually is a very tall-growing Malaysian tree that gives leafy shade. The thing is that it grows terribly straight. Hence, you get telegraph poles made from it, the masts of ships. But here we come to the kicker, the really interesting piece.
About time.
The juice from this particular tree is called poon oil. And with poon oil, you can actually burn it in lamps, possibly later in cars, drive to work on a poon. So, it's just a thought anyway.
Yes. Gwen Watford.
A poon is a large cooking utensil used by the natives of the Society Islands of the South Seas. And indeed, in the summer of 1862, a missionary called Sutcliffe disappeared while he was spreading the good word, and he could easily have ended up in a poon en casserole.
So a poon is a place where you cut up the sugar. It's a Malayan tree with interesting possibilities, and it's a South Sea cook pot. Frank?
No. No.
A bit worried, lads, there,
yes,
are you?
well, yes, yes, it could be.
Get on with it, for heaven's sake.
Whether it's... No, poon. My wife comes from Mauritius, and that's a sugar island, and the sugar canes were always put through rollers, first of all, once they were cut, and weren't chopped up. As far as I know. Has she been holding something back from me?
She has.
That's what
Plenty back.
The tree producing oil, is there a tree ever produced oil? It's the sugar.
Sugar, the place of cutting up Sir Patrick tour, Bluff. Do tell us.
A black lie.
Lovely.
Talk about there, lads.
Let's have the true one. Let us have the true one. Must know what
There
poon
we are,
means.
good old poon oil. Lovely.
There you are. Life wouldn't be worth living without knowing that the word poon meant a Malayan tree which yields oil good for what ails you. Philody, I suppose, is the next word. Frank Muir, what of it?
Well, I've written it down, yeah? It's not difficult. Philody is, lady and gentlemen, is a roosting place for bats. Need I say more?
No.
Go.
Done it.
Alan?
It's Philody. You know, it sounds like an unsuccessful music hall comedian, like Philody and Doris, but in fact not. Philody is a troop of cavalry, very hard cavalry, advanced cavalry, provided for and by any tribe living in Attica, defensive for the ordinary population. Group of mounted mercenaries, hard lads who would go out to clean up anyone who attacked Attica on behalf of the citizens.
Yes.
Good heavens.
Rachel?
Philody is one of the most beautiful words, philody, describing one of nature's most beautiful happenings, at which about April, or normally in this country about June if you're lucky, the leaves start opening and sprout on the trees, and from being little buds, little tiny leaf buds, which sometimes even now you can see, they start bursting forth, and poets burst into song, and we talk about the darling buds of May, and, well, that's Philody.
So it's where bats roost. It is kind of a cavalry, and it's the changing of the bud to the leaf, Patrick.
Good Lord.
If you're quickish, we might get another one in.
Recipes for bats. Again, the bursting buds of May, we believe. We reject all this nonsense about the hard chariot lads with the... I think... It's a hard chariot lads, in fact.
Alan, tell us.
No. Not so quick.
Come on, let's know.
No, of course, yes.
You're on the very verge of choosing the right one, Patrick, there.
Grab it again, please.
Change the bell to the leaf. Now, shall we see if we can have a little quick one? Yes, why not? Here's the next one, and it's very quick, and it's William's go.
I drove down a road in Spain, and as I came round the corner, there were a group of mules coming up towards me. I stopped, and the mules stopped. There were about 10 of them. In England, it would have been cars.
You'd have to be
They
quicker.
stopped. I hooted. They stood there. I hooted, and they still stood there.
Quicker yet.
They stood there with camstery expressions on their faces. It is a folksy adjective meaning stubborn, pig-headed, obstinate. Camstery.
Right, Gwen.
Camstery is an adjective meaning adorned with bells, like a church tower, or Father Christmas's reindeer, or cows in a Swiss pasture.
Patrick.
It's pimples on the palates of horses.
That's better.
You can't.
Did you say more?
Practically an epigram. It's pimples on the palates of horses. It's obstinate. It's adorned with bells. Alan, fairly swift.
Pimples on the palace of horses.
That was Patrick.
Nonsense!
No. The true one now, if you please. There it is, there it is, there it is. It did indeed mean obstinate. Yet again, a most remarkable comeback by the team on my left. Howsoever, at 4-5, Frank Muir and his team have won. Another trip to the old boot cupboard next week. Meanwhile, goodbye from William Franklyn.
Goodbye.
Alan Coren.
Goodbye.
Gwen Watford. Rachel Billington. Patrick Campbell.
Good night.
Frank Muir.
Good night.
Goodbye. Hello, I welcome you yet again to another new series of Call My Bluff, which is the middle-class version of the three-card trick. Among the twisters, Frank Muir.
And thank you, Robert, the Brian Clough of panel games.
I'll work that out, Frank, after.
Tonight, I have as my first guest a lady who's so beautiful she would turn even black and white sets into glorious colour. An actress who just survived the satanic rites of Dracula, Joanna Lumley. What have, you might well ask, playing the string bass, writing for Punch, and riding a bicycle in common? Well, they're all performed, although not necessarily at the same time, by Miles Kington.
Loaded dice, thimble rigging, find the lady. Who does that remind you of? You're quite right. Patrick Campbell.
Good evening. And my first guest is an actress as luscious as her lovely name, Miss Mary Peach. And my other assistant hardly ever goes downstairs, but he's an upstairs and downstairs, Mr. Simon Williams.
Now, as I recall it, I ring this bell. It's a new one, hasn't quite got the pure ring of the other. I ring this bell, you get a word, or rather in this case 2 words, well hyphenated, foo-foo. And that word is going to be defined 3 different ways by Frank Muir and his team. Only one of those definitions is the true one. That's the one that Patrick Campbell and Co. are going to try and find out. So what about foo-foo, Frank?
Foo-foo is... foo-foo is a dough, which is just edible. It's made in Guyana by boiling plantains and pulverising them and squeezing them through until you end up with a soggy mess. You'll be, I think, fairly impressed when I remind you that when Queen Victoria walked through Mr. Paxton's greenhouse in Hyde Park to make her grand tour of the exhibition in 1851, she was offered a bowl of foo-foo.
Now it's Miles Kington's go.
We've come to believe that Oriental fighting arts are very romantic, dashing, full of excitement, full of ballet, but the foo-foo disproves this, because the foo-foo is something not unlike a knuckle duster. It's a loop of leather clasped around the hand by Malaysian jungle muggers, including large knots and small pebbles, and they leap out from behind trees and stun passers-by at the back of the neck. And you will understand that there will never be a big foo-foo feature film, because it will consist entirely of people leaping out from behind trees and stunning people behind the neck.
Oh, I don't know. I think he's got a chance. You know, give it a whirl. You never know. Yes, Joanna.
A foo-foo is a little pipe. It's almost weightless because it's made of matchwood that the Chinese attach to the wings of their pet pigeons or doves.
Oh.
And thus, when released to fly about, flying, it produces weird airborne music, probably sort of which causes hisses. Ooh.
Thank you.
Hisses of oriental satisfaction from the owner of the feathered pet. Foo-foo.
Right then, now this is what has been said so far. It's a Malaysian knuckle duster. It's an edible dough made by boiling plantains, a little-known tribe, and a whistle attached to a bird. Patrick. Right.
We're rather difficult with the first word of the first game. You see, that rat over there is bound to be thinking I'm going to guess it's him. Oof, oof. I mean, never mind about the word in the first one. Well, it certainly isn't a leather knuckle duster, because the fists of those lads are hard enough without a knuckle duster.
That's true.
That's a well-known fact.
Flimsy logic.
A well-known fact. Now, all this woo-hoo on pigeons' wings, I think they've got enough music without all that part. I think that this awful glue that Queen Victoria
Spread it about.
Yes.
got a bowl of.
Is it? Are you choosing? You're choosing that.
Yes.
Are you? Then, Frank,
Looking
tell
a
us
little
true or bluff.
confident there.
We'll start as we mean to go on.
It's true! Love it!
So there you have the rights of it. Foo-foo is the edible stuff made from that thing, and which Queen Victoria had something to do with. Stay steady there, Dad. Margully is our next word, to be defined by Patrick.
Margully, it's a word with a powerfully anti-social meaning. If you margully something, it means you bash it around or make a mess of it, or destroy it, or do something bad to it. Like, say you are having a huge bowl of mulligatawny soup and somebody added, well, a little touch of marine glue to it. That would be margullying the mulligatawny. Or perhaps a huge load of haggis for the vegetarians' annual convention. That would be margullying their lunch party.
Yes. Simon Williams.
A margully is a kind of religious sneak, a telltale of the church, as it were. He's a little chap who goes into the church with no other aim in mind than to make notes or to endeavour to remember the omissions and the mumblings of various fragments of the hymns and prayers that his less devout members of the congregation will have made. He then runs off to the vicar to tell him these little faults in the service in the hope that he, the margully, will gain some kind of spiritual benefit from it. Margully.
Well, must be hard up for something to do. Mary Peach.
A margully is a rather beautiful amber-coloured apricot, which in fact looks much better than it tastes. It's rather tart if you eat it raw, but it's delicious in jams, makes a lovely chutney. It was bred by a man called John Fielder in his hothouse. Actually, in Margolly House in Ayrshire. Apricot.
Yes. Well, now, strangely enough, Mary Peach speaks of an apricot. Then we have a church-going informer, and then we have to mar or mess up, so to speak. Frank, your turn to choose.
Simon's definition reminded me of that story, the chap who dropped a parcel of brown paper parcel on the railway platform and a lot of Bibles fell out. And the porter said, "You want to pack that better, somebody highly religious might nick one of those." I don't think... The idea of somebody who was so highly religious that he sneaked on all his fellow parishioners doesn't seem really to carry much weight. I'm worried about all these details about amber-coloured apricots. Almost all apricots are fairly amber-coloured.
No, some are dark.
Aren't they? Hmm?
Some are darker.
Some are darker.
Margillies are, anyway.
Yeah, and some are apricot-coloured, I suppose. Come to think of it. I think Paddy's were so sort of appallingly dumb and not terribly convincing. I rather think it's Paddy.
You're sure?
No. I'm not gonna...
No, but you're choosing my...
But I'm choosing your...
He said that it was to
Lad.
mar something. True or bluff, Patrick? 1,
The
2,
way
3.
we mean to go on...
He was speaking the truth, willy-nilly. He was speaking the truth. Margully is to mess something up, ruin it. Here we have Frillock, score standing at 1-1. Miles Kington.
A frillock is a name for an old-fashioned kind of sail. It's an auxiliary gaff topsail. To be precise, to quote the Sailor's Handbook, it is a light sail, the head being extended on a small gaff, which hoists on the topmast, and the foot on the lower gaff. So you can understand why it's a bit old-fashioned and not much used nowadays outside the Times crossword.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So now it's Joanna Lumley, your go.
A frillock is a young girl who, as the saying goes, is no better than she should be, who by no exercise of the imagination could be called distant or aloof. I can offer you a couplet,
You can't do.
which goes as follows. Very old couplet.
Is it clean?
Yes, but I think you'll like it. Madge, my dear and bonny frillock, set we down beside this hillock.
Sheila, I really thought she said she was going to offer us a cutlet. We'll have one afterwards. Frank.
The Frillock sometimes go round cutlets, don't they? Actually, when the lad and the lass sank down behind the hillock, they might quite well have been looking at a frillock. Because a frillock is some stooks of corn bound together. Now, I know what you're going to say. Are you not going to say, but surely a stook of corn is corn bound together to start with?
Could we say that?
But, yes, say it. But no. I will respond immediately and say that, yes, but if you bind 5 stooks together and call it a frillock, it can then be a measurement of the tithe of that particular field. It's graded at so many fillocks. I've finished. You don't believe me? I'm just going to
Well,
stop.
you took us into deep water there. It's bundles of stooks, or thereabouts. It's a kind of a sail, not much... well, it's not called what it was called once. And it's a loose wench, often found by hillocks, it seems. Simon Williams.
I wasn't altogether convinced by this business about the gaff and the frillock by Miles. And his Times crossword has a bit of name-dropping in there. Wasn't convinced by that at all. I'm not sure that I buy that. I wasn't... seemed ironic that Frank should be preoccupied with measures of corn, really.
Oh, yeah.
Daniel come to judgment.
It was too easy, that one. No, I've abandoned that in favour of the recitation of Joanna Lumley.
The recitation of Joanna Lumley, yes. She said that it was a loose wench bounding around molehills and the like. True or bluff? Yes. Ironic about measures of corn. Where will it all end? I don't know. Well, anyway, that's what a fillet means. It means lady who's no better than she ought to be. Now, here, you pronounce it as you like. Catch a cow, I suppose. But then Simon Williams, is that right?
Ah, well, no, see, because the meaning of this word becomes abundantly apparent if you ignore the way it's written there and listen to anybody say it. It's catch cow. And a catch cow is an official, and his job is to... Yes, you've guessed it, is to catch cows. It's as simple as that. He has to catch cows. He's a kind of agricultural bailiff, and his job is to catch cows and impound them against the day when the unfortunate farmer who owns the cow can pay the debts he owes, and then his cow is returned. Catch cow.
Well, so he might be. He can't spell, though, can he? Now, Mary Peach.
It's pronounced Kachikov because it's a Russian word. A Kachikov is a large, flat-bottomed boat that you could see floating around the Black Sea or the Bosphorus. And it's a very interesting boat because a whole Russian family, their relations, cats and dogs, whatever animals they find necessarily, live on this boat with them and hardly ever go on land. Kachikov boat.
Strange life. Patrick.
It's a Kashikow, of course. And the Kashikow, it's an armed raid. An expedition aimed at arson, rape, more arson, more rape, burglary, laying waste to everything for miles.
A fun
But,
raid.
yeah, the fun. But Kashikows are chiefly committed by a tribe in South Kashmir called the Pushnus. And the Pushnu, they're absolute devils for Kashikows. Never stop.
Never stamp it out in Littlehampton, I understand. It's a flat-bottomed boat. It's one who impounds cows, and it's one of those raids that Patrick described. My old Kington.
It's awful. It's watching these three people all claim to be telling the truth. It's like watching the three party leaders persuading them.
Careful, lad, you're on dangerous ground.
But the difference is one of them's telling the truth, of course. I'd love to vote for Simon, the catch cow, but I'm not going to. It's too good to be true. Patrick enjoyed his so much, I think that was its own reward. I'm going to go, rather naively perhaps, for the large, flat-bottomed, family-sized boat.
Yeah, we have a lot of those on this programme, and on this occasion it was Mary Peach who said it. True or bluff, Mary? No. Now, any bets as to who gave the true definition of that? Let's see. Here it goes.
Have a little flash there, lad. There.
Against all possibility. A catch cow is indeed a chap who rounds up cows and can't spell the activity. Here we have 3-1, it now stands at, emunctory. I suppose you pronounce it, Joanna?
Yes, emunctory. I'd pronounce it like that. Emunctory. There are remains of several of these around the Mediterranean area, and it's a place of purgation. Purgation, which is a place set aside for people who wish to purge themselves of sins they've committed. And Korthikos, an ancient Greek tragic actor, which could mean he was a very old tragic actor who was Greek, or he was an ancient, locked himself up in one for 14 years, possibly as a penance for having forgotten his lines.
Yeah.
What nonsense.
He had a lisp as well.
Could never happen on this programme, of course. Frank Muir.
Emunctory is an adjective, and it's an activity that I do quite a lot of myself. Would you like me to demonstrate?
Yo, please. There was
Yeah.
silence. Not the old snuff box.
Not with
No.
Part of Act 1.
Ah.
But Act 2.
The word was
You'll do yourself an injury.
Emunctory activity is of or pertaining to blowing the nose.
Did you say something about an old tragic actor from Greece, Joanna? Well done, Aristotle, or whatever your name is. But anyway, it's Miles, your go.
Well, Simon came down rather hard on me for mentioning a Times crossword, so he's going to be very rude when I mention Latin scholars, but in fact a Latin scholar would know what an emunctory was, because it has to do with moss, the Latin for moss being munctus. Moss, of course, being the green stuff that grows where you don't want it when you're not looking. And an emunctory is stuff that gets rid of moss. There are, in fact, several chemicals on the market designed for the specific purpose. And the Romans didn't have them, of course, but they probably had a proverb which said, a rolling stone is a damn good emunctory.
Yes. That flew over a few shoulders, but it's going into the bullseye right now. It's a place where you purge your sins. It's a killer of moss, and it's the act of blowing your nose with sundry flourishes. Mary Peach.
I really don't know.
Well, 2 to 1 chance.
Emotionally, this actor in this thing for 14 years makes me reject that. Then I think I might have even heard it if it was something to do with the nose. I mean, something as simple as blowing your nose.
Didn't seem simple, did it, when he did it?
Him
Rather
blowing
difficult,
his nose.
yeah.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah, elaborate.
Complicated process, madam.
Yeah, but I think it's this chemical.
You think it's a...
To getting rid of the moss.
All right, that was Miles Kington, wasn't it? Miles, true or bluff?
No,
Oh, no. No. Evidently nothing to do with that. You'll now have to tell us the truth, whichever of you can. Doesn't seem fair, does it, really? But there you are. Emunctory does mean the act of blowing your nose. Let us see at 3-2. Well, that's the sound you make when you blow your nose, isn't it?
When you sneeze.
Itchu. Yeah, itchu.
Sneeze.
Sneeze.
Itchu.
Oh, yeah, but then you blow your nose. Don't be so exact. Dear me, pedantic. Mary, your go.
If you wanted to find an itchu, it would be very difficult these days. In the 17th century, in Korea, there were a great many itchus. They were doctors, well, sort of witch doctors, who had great influence over the people that they treated. And when the missionaries came there, obviously there was a conflict, and the missionaries did better than the itchus. So now they've sort of gone underground. It's a Korean witch doctor.
All right, Patrick Campbell.
Ready?
What do you say?
It's called Itu. A Japanese word, of course. It's a Japanese word that means cursive. Do you know what cursive handwriting is? It flows, not like the Japanese little drawings. And around about 1885, the Shumashushi government... The Shumashushi government, having heard that it was getting more and more popular in the schools, put a stop to it because they were the Conservative Party and they wanted the old kind of writing to go on.
Not a moment too soon.
No more join-up writing.
Nope. It's got to be stopped. Yes, Simon, your go.
If you've ever taken your dog for a walk in the... No, I've lost already. On the uplands of Peru or Bolivia...
Ah, yes.
You would have undoubtedly noticed itchu, which is a form of long, rather wiry grass that flourishes there. and the natives of those places harvest it.
Which places?
Peru and Bolivia, on the
Peru.
uplands.
Bolivia.
And they use it for fodder for their cattle and indeed to thatch their roofs of their huts when it's dried out. Eat you.
Yes, well, that's killed a stone dead, that is. It's Peruvian grass that comes in for a multitude of uses. It's Japanese cursive script, which is stamped out, and it's a sort of witch doctor, Mary said. Yes. Joanna, your choice?
Hello?
Haiku is Japanese something, isn't it?
It's almost
Yes,
bound to
it
be,
is.
I
You
think.
don't have to answer them.
You see, this Korean witch doctor underground. I mean, it sort of could be, but I didn't think Ichu. I wouldn't think they have an H in Korea.
I'm going to have to hurry you up, my dear.
Not long grass. It's Japanese writing.
Patrick, to a bluff?
I'm hurried.
Slightly.
Oh, it's a
yeah.
black
There-
lie.
no, And the correct definition, the true definition was, and here it goes.
There it goes.
Peruvian grass. Peruvian grass is the right answer, rather the correct definition. The score standing at 4-2, the game having drawn to a close. Patrick Campbell's team has won.
Thank you, team.
We shall be having a lot more gaslit oldies from the Oxford English Dictionary next week. At least I'm persuaded we shall. Until then, good night from Miles Kington, Simon Williams, Joanna Lumley, Mary Peach, Frank Muir, Patrick Campbell, and goodbye. Hello, Call My Bluff, which features the old fifth ace, Patrick Campbell.
After last week's rather happy opening, that my team enjoyed a comfortable victory. Once again to my aid comes Miss Mary Peach. And that well-known jokester, Mr. Simon Williams.
And the man in the elastic-sided bow tie, Frank Muir.
I think I could really afford to give my guests rather more than perfunctory introductions. Somebody actually wrote to me and accused me of being male chauvinist in my introductions to lady guests, calling them delicious and almost edible and so on.
That's my word.
I will just... You also?
You've been nicking my mail.
Well, you're a male chauvinist stoat or whatever's appropriate. So I'll have to content myself with saying that my first guest is an actress, is a cool hand with the Times crossword, and doesn't look at all, anything at all, like a boot. Joanna Lumley. And I have back with me humorous writer and serious jazzman Miles Kington.
So we're off. Bell's running in nicely. We get the first word. Pibcorn is what we get. And I'm to remind you that Patrick Campbell and his team give three definitions of pibcorn. Two are false, one is true, and it's the true one that Frank and his company try and pick out. So what about this word, Patrick?
A pipcorn in the language of chemists and pharmaceutists is a small bump or pimple below the rim of a glass to indicate the amount of liquid that the glass contains. If you have, say, perhaps an 8 minim pimple, you get 8 minims in your glass on the level of the pimple.
I'm glad, Patrick, that I've seen the day where you're talking about minims of liquid in a glass.
Oh. Can I persist?
I think
the word,
will.
of course, comes from Latin, Piper's corner, which means the limit of amplitude.
Excellent, yeah, very good. Next.
Piper's corner. Well, not a word about that. Simon Williams.
Pibcorn. Are you ready? Pibcorn is a kind of small wig named after a gentleman who rejoiced under the... No, he didn't rejoice under it. He made wigs under the name of James Pentecost Wibcorn. He was a gentleman from Stamford in Lincolnshire.
Wibcorn.
Yes.
Wibcorn, some relative of Pibcorn, I dare say, yes.
And these wigs were not your classy wigs aimed at your aristocracy. They were a working-class horsehair wig for the flunkies and footmen, or footies and flunkmen. And they had to be powdered daily by these flunkies and footmen, and that's what a bibcorn is.
Oh, yes.
Next.
Powder away. It's Mary Peach next.
A bibcorn is that with which a Welshman plays solo. In other words, when he plays it, he doesn't need anybody else around, like a marvellous choir or any of those sort of things. It's a little pipe, a sort of pipes of pan pipe, with 6 little finger holes. And actually, they used to give a prize in Anglesey for the person who played the bibcorn best.
Well, it's a Welsh pipe which they used to give a prize for if you did it nicely in Anglesey, and it's a mark on a vessel or glass vessel, I should say, and it's a wig, working class wig. Frank Muir.
Paddy's long drawn out rubbish about the Latin for limit of amplitude.
I've interrupted it by some rather vulgar remarks.
I thought gracefully and not unwittily, but a bump or pimple on the side of a medicine bottle I don't think would have a name like Pibcorn. In fact, I'm sure it wouldn't. Absolutely certain it wouldn't. And this, I don't think flunkies had special sort of cheap wigs. I think they were bought through ordinary perruquiers, and I have a feeling that isn't it. On the other hand, a Welsh pipe with 6 finger holes, I mean, how many Welshmen with 6 fingers is causing me some worry. So I will say it is the wig.
Zavig. That was, Simon, wasn't it true or bluff? Own up. Is it true? Is it false? Oh, I say. Oh, dear, oh, dear. No such thing as a working class wig, it seems. Who gave the true definition, if true definition was given?
Can't be. No, it's the title.
It's 6-fingered
Welsh. It is. Welsh pipe. I suppose they used 2 hands, probably there. Don't want to rub it in, Frank, but the Welsh pipe, it seems it was. And now, ha-da-ha. Ha-da-ha. Well, I dare say you'll pronounce it umpteen different ways, Frank.
Ha-da-ha! Ha-da-ha is the awning on a boat. The awning on a boat which plies the rivers of Bombay. It doesn't really matter what the awning's made of. It could be canvas or palm leaves, old Radio Times, as long as it shelters the passengers and crew from the noonday sun. It's a ha-da-ha, or it isn't.
What, I wonder, does Miles Kington say?
Ha-da-ha.
Oh.
Is what
they say respectfully in Java to a tribal chieftain. It's a respectful term of address, rather like Your Excellency, with the difference that it is vitally important in Java to say this after everything you say to a chieftain, even if it's so simple as, yes, hadaha, no hadaha, 3 bags full, hadaha. Or, of course, if they make a joke, you respectfully say, ha ha ha, hadaha.
Joanna Lumley.
The hadaha, same pronunciation, is a bird which is distantly related to the sacred ibis, which, as I expect you know, was venerated by the ancient Egyptians. It's a large brown stork-like bird, feeds in large flocks on the South African veldt, not cloth, prairie, and occasionally utters the cry, hadaha.
Oh, all right then. So it's a kind of Javanese form of address. It's a sort of bird, sort of awning on a boat. Patrick, your go.
Never heard ha 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 on the boat.
Just a minute, rather important conference here. Very little flashes. I don't believe that the Japanese have got a word like hadaha. That's... Well, it's not Japanese, quite simply. It isn't even a Japanese adverb, never mind.
Didn't he say Javanese, just to be... I think it was Javanese.
That's what I'm saying, too.
Right, yeah, I thought so.
Clothy.
Sorry about that, you know.
So it isn't Japanese, anyway.
Yeah.
They're only on a bird. It's a rather long word for hada. Yes. But on the other hand, Miss Peach has never heard a bird in the veldt saying hada. And neither have I ever been there either. I believe this instrument to be the awning on a boat. After all that,
you sure did.
Around, yes.
That was Frank, wasn't it?
Pad,
True or bluff?
we've been good friends.
Show it, lad.
Don't be hasty in these swift decisions.
It's 1-0 at the moment.
I don't know what I'd do if someone did take back his guess to begin with, whether it's against the rules of the game or not. I don't know. We shall live to see it, I dare say. Yes, well, I just thought I'd tell you the story of my life. Who's got the true definition, I wonder? It's that large bird that Mary never heard on the veldt. Well, why should she? Doesn't say it all the time. Coloboma is the next word. Simon, your go.
You're quite right, coloboma.
Ah.
It's a pathological term.
It is.
It's quite a serious matter, this one. It's a form of congenital malformation of the eyeball. Luckily, it's a fairly rare affliction. I dare say that not even your GP will have heard of it.
Caused by television.
It's a miracle that I have. And it's a defect of the iris of the eyeball caused by the imperfect closure of the choroidal fissure. And that is what a columna is.
Yeah.
Well,
Mary...
it's a giggle, isn't it?
Yes, while it lasted, Mary Peach.
A coloboma is, well, I mean, if you wanted to find one, you'd have to go to South America and you'd have to go underground because it's a sort of catacombs. It's hewn out of rock. They make little shells for the bodies. And in Chile, they found one with 12,000 bodies in it. By the way, Frank, it's prehistoric.
Is it? Excellent.
Well, just exactly what was your drift there, madam? By the way, Frank, it's prehistoric. Good heavens
Well, I
above.
didn't think he was listening.
I was.
I thought there was an inwardness to it.
Don't be put off.
Patrick.
Coloboma. It's a clay-like substance which contains barium sulfate and calcium.
Yeah.
It's found all over the world, and nobody can find anything whatever to do with it. For years, they were looking at coloboma, great lumps of it, and suddenly somebody decided to bake it. And it turned into a kind of porcelain, a cheaper version of porcelain, which is super for making the insulation for electric light bulb sockets.
Yes, it had to come from somewhere.
What are you laughing at?
Often
When did you have a porcelain electric light bulb socket?
You know what? I suppose it transferred it. You mean the bit at the end, do you?
The bit at the end? Of course not. The
Actually,
bit...
the socket's got some in it too, Frank. Look in one afterwards.
Socket and see.
The bit at the end.
I shouldn't have gone on that long. It's quite right. It's an awfulness, a disease of the eye. It's cheap porcelain finds its way to the bottom of electric light sockets, and it's kind of tomb or sepulchre, that sort of thing. Miles.
Eyeballs, catacombs, clay. It's a sort of clay from which you make catacombs, which cause eyeball inflictions. It's not the clay. I don't think it's the clay. No. Oh. It's too mundane, too prosaic. It's not the catacombs, because I don't think I've ever read about Peruvian catacombs and such big ones. It should be everyday reading. I think it's the eyeball affliction.
The affliction of the eyeball. Simon Williams. True or bluff?
No,
You've got it. It is indeed an affliction of the eyeball, but a rare one, happily. 2-1, next word, Morrisa. Yes, I think Morrisa. Miles Kington.
Morrisa was the trade name of a Victorian coal scuttle, the kind of big box with a hinged lid in front. And it was called Morrisa because it was originally made by the family firm of, not as you might think, Fotheringay, but Morris. ICE at the end. It has fallen out of fashion now and is seldom found except in rural auctions where an auctioneer will hope for a bid for a Morrisa. You can buy one quite cheaply. The problem after that is buying the coal, of course. Morrisa.
Right, Joanna.
A Morrisa is a flat steel hand tool, vaguely like a mason's trowel, that's used for morrising. And in case you don't know what morrising is the spreading of paint during the manufacture of oilcloth. So Morrisa, I'm just checking, is an oilcloth painter's paint spreader.
Oilcloth painter's paint sprayer.
I said it.
Spreader.
Righto. Well, it's Frank. Your
Morrisa is somebody who has something akin to a waltzer and a black bottomer. He is a he, or going backwards, a she, who does Morris dancing. It is one with such a love of the terpsichorean tradition of this great country and of Spain that he or she is quite willing to twine handkerchiefs about his or her calf and dance about the public thoroughfare, a Morrisa.
Well, it's a hand tool used in the manufacture of oil cloth. It's a coal scuttle, no longer in production. It's a Morris dancer. Simon Williams.
The idea of Frank taking out that red handkerchief and tying it round his leg to do the black bottom is
Yes,
not appealing to you. Does it appeal to you?
Oh, not in the least.
No. Ooh. Miles must be so busy of a morning with other things. I don't think he's probably been round the rural auctions looking for coal scuttles. On the other hand, I don't particularly think Joanna Lumley was that fluent with her little trowel.
Well, it's just, well...
Sorry, love. What? But nevertheless, Joanna had a lack of fluency about that explanation that leads me to believe that that's what a Morrisa is.
Well, she said it was a fellow much engaged in the production of oil cloth. True or bluff? She fooled you.
Yes.
She fooled you. Who gave the true definition of yonder word?
Oh, no.
I did say.
A Morrisa is a Morris dancer. Score standing at 3-1. We have Mary Peach.
Ai is the most fantastic, beautiful Japanese fish. sort of wonderful pink scales, and rather like a sort of size of a carp. And carp. And during the 17th century, because they were so beautiful and so rare and such a wonderful delicacy, they were kept only for the emperors to either eat or to have in their fish ponds in captivity. And it was the prerogative of the emperor to have one of these beautiful eye fishes.
Good. Right, Patrick.
Ear is a kind of non-grape bearing vine that grows all over Hawaii and Samoa, like ivy over England.
That's a great film.
It can be woven into mats, either big mats or small mats or medium-sized mats.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, but it does because they're used for currency in Samoa. A big mat is got a quid's worth of mat, a smaller mat, and so on. It's a matter of mathematics.
I thought for a minute you'd turn into Frank Muir there. Simon Williams.
It's very simple. It's not any of those it's IE, and it's a now obsolete unit of electromotive force, which would be equivalent by modern measurements to about 1.825 volts. The reason it came to be known as IE, Frank Muir is busy calculating to see if it's correct. It is correct. You'll find it quite faultless. Is that a man called Isaac Ehrenberg was the man who invented it, and he had hoped to achieve immortality by giving it the name of his initials, and that's what it is.
Bad luck, Isaac. It was it's a unit of electromotive force. It's called something else now. It's a vine. Japanese goldfish. Joanna Lumley.
Well,
No,
the reason this IE didn't get it, IE is also id est. That's why he failed, your electrical man, because it's already known IE means id est. That's why he didn't win out with his initials, so he's no good.
He was a scientist, not a Latin scholar.
You can't invent an electromotive force. You can only discover it.
Discover it.
No, he created the unit of it.
No, but
he harnessed the unit of it.
That's gone. Don't like that. It's the calf-sized fish. Carp-sized fish is pretty silly. But even sillier is the carrying around old mats as currency. That's very silly.
I wouldn't have any.
It's the fish.
You reckon it's the fish? That was Mary, wasn't it? Yeah. True or bluff?
It's the bluff.
Ka-chow. Let us quickly, or fairly swiftly hear the true one, then we can get another one in, I think. Got it there somewhere, Lance? Oh.
It's a silly old mat.
It was the mats made out of vine. We've got just ting-a-ling, comfortable time for Contrecot. And it's Joanna, your go.
Contrecot is an ecclesiastical vestment which went out of date at about the same time as Thomas à Becket went out of date. It's a floor-length cape made out of a very rich material like satin, and it's warm, so a priest can do his thing in the chilly churches. Chilly churches or drafty deaneries. It could be called a curate cosy.
I'm sure that's the way he thinks of it, Frank.
Contrecot is a kind of processional dance, Brittany, rather like a mobile harvest festival. Lots of dancers and marrows and sheaves of corn, carrots and things. There's an English version is that the big bone, the Cornish. It's a bit like the Cornish floral dance, only from Brittany. Thank you.
Will you be able to give me the definition
Don't leave
later
off
on?
quick. Someone will put a butterfly net over your head. Now, Miles.
A corncot is quite simply an amulet which you wear to ward off a spell or charm. And as we're running out of time, I'll just quote a bit of Alexander Pope, if I may,
about
one of
30
his
or 40
prologues.
verses, if it goes.
Well, I put it down to 2 lines. Now touched by corncots, they change again and stand majestic and recalled as men. Alexander Pope.
Oh, I say. On an off day. Let's see now. It's a spell against spells, it's a processional dance, and it's a kind of a church vestment. Mary, I think you'd better choose fairly swiftly.
I've got to be quick.
Yeah.
I don't believe Joanna. It could be the dance, and it could be, what was it?
Which?
Yes, I think it's Frank.
Oh, it's Frank. Frank, he's
Oh,
a
that dancing
processional
thing,
dance.
I think it is.
Chucking carrots about, true or bluff?
I do. I think it is.
No. No. Taint that. Quickly, the true one.
It's the curate's
There you are. Church vestment of which he spoke so handily. Well, the score standing at 4-2. Yes, the winners are Frank Muir and Co.
Hooray.
Well then, we shall be passing pinchbeck on you next week, I dare say. Until then, a polite goodbye from Simon Williams, Miles Kington, Mary Peach, Joanna Lumley, Patrick Campbell, Frank Muir, and goodbye. Hello again, this is Call My Bluff, the literary man's liar dice, featuring Frank Muir.
Thank you anyway, Fan. It's always a policy of the management to try to bring new faces onto the programme, and we have a new face and a new voice, because my first guest is the first full-time lady newsreader on splendid Radio 4, Sheila Tracy. It's also the policy of your management to bring back those servants who have given satisfaction to customers, which is our excuse for hoiking back musicologist, poet and literature director of the Arts Council, Charles Osborne.
And, of course, well known to you, Ireland's Cavalier of Song, Patrick Campbell.
Thank you very much indeed. Good evening. There are some actresses whose name one can only breathe with a sigh. And you'll see why in a moment when I say that my first guest is Madeline Smith. And my other assistant created, I think, one of the great comic performances in the history of television. In The Last of Summer Wine, Mr. Peter Sallis.
Now, some people think that all those names and all that's been said is the start of the game. It's not. That is, you get the first word when you ring a bell like that, is what you do, and you get a word like "fillady," and they pronounce it 3 different ways. Indeed, Frank Muir and his team will define it 3 different ways. 2 are false, one is true. That's the one that Patrick Campbell and co. are after. So, Frank, what about this word?
Philody is was a kind of gold thread used by the mile to tart up military and naval uniforms. Not Duke of Wellington, Admiral Vernon. They had decent stuff. It was a kind of pinchbeck gold metallic thread thing sewn round the epaulets so that junior officers glittered. Eventually, of course, they either sank or were promoted to admirals who could afford proper gold.
Yes.
Next,
Food
please.
for thought, I dare say. Charles Osborne?
Well, the Philody is a smallish songbird, a native to Newfoundland. It's a bird which, judging from its description, must be a close relative of the nightingale, I would say. It was first seen in Newfoundland in 1622. It was flying around with some curlews and some partridges. And since that time, I believe that, I do find this rather hard to believe, but I believe that nobody of any note has ever seen one again.
Sheila, Tracy.
Well, a Philody is a foolish or fanciful notion, a sort of crack-brained idea that really doesn't stand up to logical examination. I'll give you an example. The Mechanics magazine in the early 19th century, I think it was, held a competition to find a perpetual motion machine, which, of course, they never found because it was a Philody.
Yes. Well, it's a foolish notion, such as you spoke of. It's the gold thread that Frank Muir said it was, and kind of a bird.
He's rattled.
Patrick.
The man is on the run already.
I don't believe that anyone was bird spotting in Newfoundland in 1692. They weren't bothered about it, but they were either eating them or shooting.
1622?
As early as that?
As early as that, yes.
Well, if you'd speak more clearly then.
It's only 4:20.
Yes.
Nobody, 1622 in Newfoundland was birds, but never been seen again. Has it ever again? No, disappeared
Not
off
by
the face
anyone
of
of
the
note.
No, not by anyone of note.
No.
But it certainly isn't gold pinchbeck thread sinking young midshipmen. Or is it? This cracker-brained idea to fill it deep. I think, against all my better inclinations, it's a Newfoundland bird.
The bird, of which Charles Osborne spoke and said that no one of any note had ever seen it. True or bluff? Well, it certainly is this bird. Whether or not anyone's seen it who's anything special, I don't know. But that's one mark to the Campbell team. Well, say what you like. Cholum. Patrick.
Cholum. It's a kind of Asiatic corn that resembles millet. It's grown all over India and even further east than that. And just check my notes for a single second here, but what I'm absolutely certain. 1875 was the year. What year? That almost the whole of Madras was covered with 500,000 acres of golden cholum.
I think you're quite right. Stop there. Don't spoil it. Peter Sallis.
Yes, well, a colum is a strainer. And it's used at certain Eastern religious ceremonies for purifying water. And when I say purifying, I don't really mean in the practical sense, but more in the religious sense. The ordinary, unblessed water is passed through the colum, and it is then transmuted, for want of a better word, into holy water, which can then be used for anointing purposes, let's say.
Cast a reverent hush on one and all as well, it might. Madeline Smith.
In your breakfast egg, or indeed in any bird's egg, you will find 2 of these, and they are called cola, or chola if you prefer. They are in fact the membrane keeping the yolk, keeping it there.
That's the shell, surely.
And in a state of suspense, that's it.
As we all are.
That's it. In fact, they are membranes.
Membranes. Well, they're part of an egg, if I've got you right. They're Asiatic corn, if I've got Patrick right, and they're a strainer for holy water, if I have Peter Sallis correctly. Frank, choose it.
I enjoyed Patrick's definition very much, the being smothered in Eastern corn. It was a fate that I wouldn't wish upon you. I don't think that's true. It doesn't sound a very Eastern word to me. Could be, but I don't know.
Shalom, kolom,
Oh,
it's well.
No,
but we don't really
no,
believe
no,
it.
no. I cannot see the advantage of passing water lightly through a sieve of the Ganges and thereby making it holy. I mean, the stuff from an Indian river would sort of kill anybody at 40 paces. So I like this membrane thing of the egg. I think an egg's a very good thing.
That was Madeline.
Can we have a flash?
Yes.
Yes. True or bluff, Madeline? Tell us.
I have to flash it slowly.
So, twant that. We shall now learn what it was. The true definition, if you please.
Round about 500,000 acres of golden corn.
There we are. Shalom is Asiatic corn, of which we have more than our fair share. Now then, we have a word called, well, you know, I say sunk. Charles Osborne, sunk, would you say?
I say sunk. Sunk, yes. But wouldn't you imagine? And a sunk is a primitive bridge made of beams or tree trunks over a narrow gorge. And the ends of each beam or tree trunk are buried in a mound of mud. I mean, the most likely place for you to come across a sunk is in the Patkai Hills, I would think, which are in the very north of Burma, as you must know.
Oh, don't tell me about
Yes, the Patkai Hills. Primitive bridge.
Good. Sheila, now.
Ah, well, a sunk is the boss of a Red Indian's household, or perhaps it should be wigwam hold. And being the head or senior squaw takes precedence over all the other squaws, including the Red Indian chief himself. Now, by the way, a little interesting fact you might like to know, and that is that a lady called Onondaga, who was a sunk of the Chippewa tribe in the 1850s, was over 6 inches tall, which means she could look down on you and on me. Just, well, almost.
Sideways.
Now, Frank.
Have you considered the desperate plight of a Cossack or a Tartar in the Russian steppes when the weather gets bad? As it does, it's frightful out there. Now, what they do is they rush into the room where there's a sunk. Because it's a kind of stove, and yet not a stove. It's about the size of a bed, and it's fed by pieces of wood inserted through the hole in the wall from another room, and you could sleep on it.
Yes, I think they are, Frank. It's a very nice, warm Russian stove. Makes you drowsy. It's a bridge, and it's kind of a senior Indian lady. Peter.
Well, without trace, I've written down. Primitive bridge. I find hard to believe these hills. Again, difficult to hear. Patkai
Hills.
Ah, Patkai Hills, yes. Yes, I know her. Boss of Red Indian Campus, don't know what to say about that. Cossack stove, don't really know what to say about that. All those hours locked in Potter's Bar Library don't seem to have got me anywhere. I'm going to plump for number 3. I'm going, in fact, plump for the Cossack stove, Frank Muir.
Frank, yes, you did say it. Indeed you did. True or bluff? Looks well pleased.
Do I?
Yes, that's how you look. If you that about the stove had not been for naught, who gave the true definition? Let us see. Ah! Top Indian lady is what sunk is. That's it. 2-1. Nothing in it. Coming, Peter Sallis.
Ah, a cumming is a large oblong vessel used in brewing beer. It's about 18 inches deep. What they do with the cumming is that they place it under the vat where the beer is being brewed, and it collects the froth that runs from the vat during the course of fermentation. They collect it in the cumming. You'll not be surprised to hear that this is a Scottish invention, and one can imagine the thrifty Scots having fun drinking the froth. Yes.
Madeline
Is
Smith.
that kind of racial remark allowed on the programme?
Well, I never know whether score's admissible, but there you are, they said it. We'll have to leave that to older and wiser heads. Certainly not Madeline Smith's. I mean, oh, God. Can I cancel that? Madeline, will you proceed?
Yes. Cumming is any object, such as a fence or hedge or wall, that prevents one from being bothered by some hideous edifice, like a glue factory or some pipes or, for instance.
How does it do that?
And it seems that nobody knows whether it was called after a Mr. Cumming, who wished to preserve his privacy. It's left up to you, really.
But, madam, it's your job to give
No,
the definition.
no. It's unknown.
She's left you in what they call a quandary. Patrick, you'll go.
Take the Wild West, the Big Drench Saloon, in comes Josh Cumming. And they're all glad to see him because this unhappy lad has got the almost disease of playing a game called Pinochle and drawing the kind of hand that you cannot improve upon even with an iron bar. You can melt it and boil it. You can add fruit to it, but you're still on a loser. And so the unimprovable hand in the game of Pinochle is named after Josh Cumming, which is a Cumming.
Well, it's a screen that can separate you from what you don't want to see. It's an overflow dish in the course of brewing beer, and it's a card hand that nobody wants, but this chap always got. Charles Osborne.
Well, the Froth Collector of Peter Sallis, which sounds like the title of a forthcoming play, I don't think I believe for one moment at all. As for this very useful non-definition that Madeline gave, I don't think there's enough there to really give us anything to go on. Patrick's Pinochle player is extremely unlikely. I'm going to do that. It's the Froth Collector of Peter Sallis.
Well, let's see. Let's see whether that's done you any good. Peter Sallis now, wasn't it? Yeah, true or bluff? Here he goes.
That's what higher education does for you.
It's all at 2-1, Charles. No one
This
works
is
the thing
supposed
out.
to be a game that mildly disturbs the intellect, not...
Are you suggesting I haven't a mildly disturbed intellect?
Well, it's not doing. It's standing you in very good stead, Charles, tonight. 2-2. Let's have another one. All right, should I repeat that it is an overflow dish for beer, which is what you guessed? Turnar is the next one, and it's Sheila Tracy's go.
Well, if anybody knows what that most beautiful of instruments, a trombone, looks like, then that is a good description of a turnout, because it consists of two bits of pipe that go one in front of the other, and you blow at one end, and you get some sounds to come out at the other. And it's a Middle Eastern musical instrument. And, as I say, the best description is to think of a sort of trombone. It's a sort of old-fashioned trombone.
All right, Frank.
A turnar, a dirnar was the
Steady, lad.
was the lowest form of life at the Royal and Ancient University of St Andrews. You see, when chaps went in, if they were a son of a nobleman, they were called a prima, and their mother was called a prima donna. No. Expunge that from your mind. If they were merely the son of a gentleman, they were called secunda, and if they were just the son of a heap of McRubbish, they were called ternar.
By whom?
So out-of-work caddies and...
just a moment.
He's taken it seriously, hasn't he? Written it down.
Take it all seriously.
Now you better do the same,
Apart
Charles
from-
Osborne.
Yes.
It's certainly your turn.
Yes. This you must listen to very closely, because a ternar is the anterior portion of the stomadium that confers a bilateral symmetry to the proboscis of an anthozoan zooid. That is to say, a ternar is a particular formation of a gnat's nose.
That struck home.
Yes. Don't. Yeah. Stop right there. It's a gnat's nose. It's a Scotch commoner, and it's an early trombone. Madeline Smith.
I
Good start.
think it could easily be 2 pieces of pipe from the Middle East. It could just as easily be an out-of-work caddy's son from the University of St Andrews. Or a gnat's nose. In other words, I've no idea.
Yes. Well, let's play something else.
Because I think gnat's nose is possibly a little unlikely, maybe, and because I like it too much. Could I pick the out-of-work caddy's son, please?
Well, of course you could. That was Frank Muir who spoke so feelingly on that score. To a rebuff.
The greatest happiness in the world.
Oh! So, the ternar is, in fact, nothing to do with the Scotch caddy, but it was what a commoner was called at St Andrews University in years gone by. Here we have Daubrey and Madeline, it's your turn.
Oh. Well, Daubrey is a state of being in bewilderment, confusion, a state of not knowing, and is always used, or only in the expression being in a state of bewilderment, right? In a state of Daubrey, in other words. And this time, it is called after a Mr. Charles Daubrey, I believe a Victorian gentleman, an artiste.
D apostrophe, is that?
No, just D without the apostrophe.
And that says up there.
He had a very clever act, and where he convinced people that he was confused and bemused, but it was not so.
Well, Patrick, what...
A fairly Daubrous definition.
In monastic circles, a Daubrey is a light reflection, a kind of small, cold collation. If you happen to be in a monastery garden, of course it's a kind of lay brother, you happen to be in there with the fresh air, and you saw a monk in front of you pulling out a ham sandwich from underneath his habit and munching it, you could say to him, "Having your Daubrey, Brother Aubrey?"
He'd sock you on the jaw, wouldn't he?
He's eating at the time he's busy.
Worst of all, he'd say, "What was that?" And then you'd have to say it again. That'd be dreadful. Peter Sallis.
Yes, a Daubrey, as the name implies, is a semi-skilled craft of daubing on walls. And by that I don't mean daubing of graffiti. I mean daubing in the sense of covering the walls with, coarse daub of plaster. Anybody who practices the semi-skilled craft of Daubrey would use as his basic materials, well, let's see now, mud or clay or